What's up, alchemists? Welcome back into the channel. Today we're here with a Remnant 2 guide that will cover the base game of Rem 2 and its DLCs. So if you're someone who is returning to the game or brand new to it, this guide will help you navigate the campaign, understand the loot system, and start building powerful character setups. As someone with over 700 hours in the game, I've gathered some insights for beginners, and remember, veterans, feel free to drop in and add your tips. So let's jump right into this. We're going to start with the campaign structure, area, layout, and events. In Remnant 2, the campaign is spread out across 3 worlds and biomes, more with the DLCs, and each world has 2 main storylines, or 3 with each DLC, and it has an adventure mode where you can target specific worlds to explore. So if we take a look at this world stone, when you actually unlock this in Remnant 2, come to a world stone, and here's where you control pretty much the game's structure. This is where we can turn around and go to world settings. And in world settings, we have our campaign. You can re-roll the campaign as many times as you want, and you have adventure mode. Inside of adventure mode, you have your different areas, Naruja, Yushalos. Then you have the DLCs you can go through, the Awakened King, the Forgotten Kingdom, and a Dark Horizon. And these are all areas that you'll be able to go through and target for specific loot, target for specific things in the base game, and the DLC just expands on each area. Inside the campaign, there are specific worlds that you can only access inside of the campaign, like the Labyrinth and Root Earth. You can't access them anywhere else. They're not part of any of the adventure modes. To get specific items or do specific things, you'll actually have to go through the campaign to get that. For example, if you want to get the polygon, you need access to a labyrinth, do a whole bunch of secret nonsense, and inside the labyrinth, you can actually collect the polygon. So there's things like that you need to go through the campaign. You might have to roll a few times to get the items that you want. But that is, I like how they do that because it adds replayability to not only the adventure mode, but actually the campaign. If you either want it for a specific type of build, or you're just a completionist and want to collect all the items. That's how the campaign structure works. Let's go check out how the overworld works. Let's head back over into Narud. We'll come here, and I'll show you what the actual overworld and dungeons kind of look like and how they're actually working. So this is part in the DLC, which you access through the adventure mode. And once you actually get into a specific world, whether it be the campaign or you're going through adventure mode, and you open up your map, when you start brand new in a map, you'll actually have the Fog of War, and you'll need to unlock or make every area visible as you traverse through the map. And then you'll find doors like this through in the map. So this is a side path. This would be like a dungeon, and this would be like a main path, somewhere that like going to a new area. Looking at the legends here, this will be like a dungeon. This could be a dungeon you need to go through. This will be the main area you need to go through to get to your next area following the story path. But some places actually have a bunch of dungeons that you can go through to find different items, beat different bosses and whatnot. Inside the actual dungeons, you will have events that will pop up. You can also have events in the overworld. So as you're going through in the dungeon, you might have a random boss that pops up or a puzzle you have to do to unlock certain things to get an item. Sometimes actually a dungeon isn't even a boss fight. It's actually just a puzzle you need to solve to unlock the items. There could be multiple ways to actually solve a puzzle that's either in the open world or in one of the dungeons that you can get multiple items from. That's actually pretty cool. And because of this, it adds a lot of replay value. So you might beat a dungeon one way and you come in again and you might notice something different, or maybe you read a guide like on Fetch to Life or something, and you realize, oh, snap, I can actually do it this way. And from there, you have a different item. And for example, Infested Abyss Dungeon actually has 3 different possible endings, and all those endings will give you a unique reward. I really like what Gunfire Games did here and just added a lot of replayability to this to unlock different items in different ways. There's a lot of different puzzles even in the open world, like Yisha. You can find a mod and a weapon in the same vicinity just by doing a puzzle slightly different. So it's a very cool how they did that. The Gunfire Games are absolute geniuses, so I appreciate the attention to detail and the attention to just adding some fun stuff for us to do. That's the campaign structure, the area layout, and events. Not much more there. If I miss anything, please leave a comment down below. Let's jump on to the next area. Next, we'll be talking about enemy types, bosses, and modifiers. And Remnant 2 has a wide variety of enemies, ranging from standard mobs to elite enemies and a tougher class known as aberrations. And aberrations are stronger enemies that will respawn randomly with modifiers. Now, these aberrations can actually spawn inside of your dungeons, or they can actually spawn somewhere on the overworld. And when they spawn, they will be a little bit tougher to have, but they might actually spawn with modifiers. And they can have modifiers like Drain, Empathy, Hardy, And these will all have different effects on them. Like Drain, the aberration will have lifesteal. It can have thick skin. It reduces your critical chance by 10% and critical damage by 15%. So if your crit build to kind of negate your build a little bit, which kind of like makes you either play through it to see how good you are, or maybe adapt and change your build around a little bit. There's a bunch of different modifiers you can get on all these bosses. Makes it a little bit harder. And most of the time you're playing Apocalypse, when you fight certain bosses through in all the dungeons, you're always going to have a modifier on them. So it makes it a little bit more difficult and challenging. The other cool thing about aberrations is that they will drop specific items called corrupted shards. These corrupted shards can be used back over with Dwell and let you buy corrupted weapons for using the corrupted shards, which will take a weapon you already have, like the corrupted arbalast. The arbalast is a weapon you can actually get inside the game. You can go trade in the arbalast and trade in those corrupted shards to get the corrupted arbalast. It functions slightly differently. The mod has it's slightly different. It changes the whole way the gun works by having a corrupted weapon. So it might benefit your build. If you're using something, it might not, but you can always refund it and get back the original arbalest if you want. But it's pretty cool that they added the weapons in this way. When you're fighting those aberrations, there's a chance that you drop these, so pay attention when you're picking up your items. You can only hold 10 of them. Once you hit a maximum of 10, you can't collect anymore, so it's just either sit with it or just don't collect anymore. Also to note that some bosses, like the puzzles and events, have alternate kills or endings that will yield you different loot. So again, also experiment with the different methods to get all possible rewards. If you don't feel like figuring it out, there's guides out there you can look at. Community's probably most likely figured it out already. So you can just check out something on Fetch Your Life or Reddit, and they will have the answer for you there, so you can get through whatever rewards that you want. And that is the enemies and bosses and modifiers kind of in a nutshell. So let's move on to our next topic. Next up, we're going to be talking about the loot system, and this is a system that's focused on fixed and random or RNG. Inside the game, you have fixed loot where certain items are found in the same locations. For example, a particular ring might always appear behind a locked door in a specific dungeon. This loot won't change on future playthroughs, though the dungeon itself may not appear. So even though the item is fixed, the dungeons, as you re-roll them, are RNG. So certain dungeons may not spawn once you re-roll the campaign. You might get a whole different slew of different things. Next up, we have random loot, which of course is part of some type of RNG loot pool. For instance, when you find a glowing purple item on a corpse, and this could actually be in the open world or in a dungeon somewhere that you're running through, and there might be a purple item on the ground. Whatever it might be, it will be pulled from a loot pool for that specific world. So a ring that exists in Nerud is not a ring that can exist in Yisha. They are very distinct loot tables, and you can only find those specific rings in those specific worlds. So if you're looking for something, make sure you know where that is, either by using a tool like Remnant Safeguarding, which I'll have linked in the description. Very great tool to see what's actually spawning, what dungeons are spawning inside your world, and what items are there as well if you're trying to target chase specific items. And just to note as well, as you're going through the game, if you are picking up loot that you've already acquired from the RNG or is fixed loot, it will automatically give you scrap materials. This is also actually a decent thing to talk about too. Inside of Ward 13, we'll head back there really quick. So at a certain part in the game, you're going to unlock a bunch of different vendors, Cass being one of them. He will have rings that will eventually she'll be able to sell to you. I believe this updates every hour, if I'm not mistaken. So if you come here as you're out in the world exploring and doing whatever you're doing, you come back here and check her item stash. She might have a ring or something different to sell inside the new DLC. She actually sells the Prism of Greed here, but you need to come back here and check it, because if a few hours go by and you never checked it, you might actually be missing drops or items if you're so inclined to get them. If not, then it doesn't really matter. But you can get some items from her here. Same thing with Reggie. Reggie sells some certain items as well. They will usually show up after you do specific things in the game. There might be a specific ring that might show up that you can only get after you achieve a certain goal in the game or do something in the game. Then you'll see some of these rings pop up. So there's a bunch of different vendors that sell things here, but a vendor will not sell you the same item twice. Once you collect the item gets pulled out of the table. You will never see that item again from one of the vendors. That's it, it's done. Where the difference is, if you're out in the world and you collect the same item, you get scrap. But that's pretty much the loot system in a nutshell. Let's go on to our next topic. One of the biggest things that Remnant 2 is probably known for is their build diversity, and it's probably one of the most exciting aspects of Remnant 2. There are truly countless combinations of making a build with 13 different archetypes you can actually choose from, allowing you to actually equip 2 of them. Some of them synergize really well, some of them don't, but you can still make things work even without not having synergy. But always trying to find synergy works really well. Then once you have your archetypes picked, you can then work on your amulets, your 4 rings you equip, your handgun, and your long gun plus your melee weapon, and find a bunch of synergies between the two. My synergy right now is like an explosive build with some shields. It works pretty well. Armor in this game doesn't really give you anything. It's really just there for aesthetics and just looks. I really wish they would have brought in like transmogging so we could have keep the armor that we want, but kind of transmog how we want to look. So that's cool. And then of course you have relics. With the change in the DLC, the last one, Dark Horizon, relics no longer are attached to the fragment system. That is now gone. So now you just have a relic that will give you whatever the case is. This can help complement your build as well, or add extra functionality. I can have a shielded heart, which gives me a shield of 26 seconds, so which is nice. So if you're having a shield build or you just want that extra thing that to touch your health, you can have a shield. With the release of the new DLC, the Dark Horizon, Gunfire Games added a new fragment system in. They got rid of a bunch of fragments, added new ones in here, and then they went ahead and now you can level up a system called the prism system that you can modify by feeding the prism specific fragments. And the higher the fragment, the higher chance of you actually get the roll you're looking for with the prism, which is nice. You can kind of like, exploit the rolls by feeding a specific type of fragments, which is nice, and give yourself a higher chance of specific roll chances. You're going after the stats that you want on your prism. I think there's 7 different prisms that you can choose. Right now I have 3 of them, only working on Rum right now. And then this takes about 10 to 12 hours to actually level up to level 50. Once you hit level 50, you can cleanse the stone. I believe there's talks now. They're looking to make in the next patch once you hit level 10, you'll be able to cleanse the stone and get back your fed fragments, which is awesome. Very happy for that. So this is really cool to see. So in addition to actually getting the different bonuses that are out there that you can potentially get with the prism stats, you also can equip your fragments, which really just makes a pretty overpowered character over time, which is nice to see. By the time you hit level 50, and if you're going after the correct stats that complement your build correctly, you will have a pretty overpowered character that will probably just wipe the floor with anything coming at you. So they really did open the floodgates with the DLC, which is pretty cool to see. It's just some minor setbacks with I think this right now, but hopefully the patch that comes out will fix it. Talking about this and archetypes. I want to talk about the early game. When you first start out brand new, very early in the game, you'll be able to choose from a small set of archetypes. You'll be able to catch from the challenger, the medic, the handler. I recommend going for the handler as a beginning archetype. It has a dog companion that can fend off multiple enemies for you. If you die or run over, use one of your relics and res you back up. So it's actually nice. It gives you a little bit more survivability. Like the challenge is nice. You can take some hits, but it has the die hard perk. But the handler is really nice because it will fend off those enemies for you and just aggro them while you're trying to do whatever the hell you're trying to do. And just, but sometimes you get swarmed with enemies. So having that extra little bit of aggro draw is nice. So it's definitely worth grabbing. And because you don't have a lot of items to build for like a complex or cohesive build, that's why many of us recommend starting with the hand first. Don't be afraid to level up your starter weapons either. Some people like the bulldog shotgun or like the big iron greatsword. Don't be afraid to level these up. These are actually pretty good in their own right, and they're pretty viable at end game depending on how you build. So don't be afraid to level them up. Use your scrap sparingly, but as you're leveling, if you don't find any weapons that you like, level them up. They are more than viable. So that kind of covers build diversity and the early game. So let's jump into our next topic. So we talked about world settings earlier. Every time you re-roll your adventure or start your game, you'll be able to choose from a specific difficulty. The intended way to play the game is through Survivor. This is how it's meant to be intended to play. But if you want to challenge yourself more, you can go all the way up. Nightmare is like the attended place for most difficulty. So if you want to play an Apocalypse, you can. It's designed as an absolute extra challenge for players who want to just push themselves. If you can beat Nightmare based on the community, you're already considered competent. And Survivor, like I said before, is the intended difficulty for most players. but Apocalypse purely for personal accomplish it. Don't feel pressure to jump in until you're fully ready. I'm a masochist and love playing Apocalypse. I actually just dropped it down this next reroll to Nightmare. My nerves just needed a break from Apocalypse. And that covers the difficulties really quick. I just want to touch base on that really fast. Don't feel pressured to play Apocalypse because you're watching, X, Y, and Z streamers or YouTubers do it. Doesn't mean anything. If you want to push yourself, go for it. If you could beat Nightmare, your build's great, you're good in a good spot. Want to push yourself further, go right ahead. And that covers most of Remnant 2. I want to go over some starter tips for you if you're a brand new player to the game. So we'll jump into these. There's a few that I want to go over. As we discussed before, replay dungeons. Always revisit your dungeons and events you've completed. Many will have alternate solutions that you yield different loot. That's imperative. If you're trying to get an item, you might have to re-roll the game or re-roll the world and actually go back to the dungeon and find a way to beat it separately. Check out Reddit, check out Fetch Your Life. They have great information on how to do the different alternate endings and different puzzles and events. You also have simulacrum drops. These are pretty much used for upgrading to your final tier of your inventory. That's these guys, and these drop from bosses and larger enemies in later areas. So these will probably drop off your apparitions. Some elite enemies will drop it, but so as you get these, save them. You'll need these to get to the final tier, whether it be tier 20 or tier 10 is for boss weapons. Tier 20 is for your base weapon. There we go. We mentioned before, scrap is scarce and it's hard to come by. Don't waste it on unnecessary purchases or just crafting the game. If you're unsure of what weapons you want to use, level them up where you feel comfortable, but don't go overboard. Save your scrap. It is really hard to come by. Use it sparingly. Experiment with items. There are many interactions between items and environments. For example, certain rings or amulets trigger events or grant bonuses when used in specific areas. For example, there are specific items like the red dough. That is here we go. The red dough sigil. If you use this in specific areas, it actually opens up secret traps. You can go in there and get other items that you can use for later. So there's a lot of cool secret things going on. If you equip specific items and then go fight a boss, it might give you extra dialogue. So it's very cool on how certain things actually happen. So go play around, have at it, have fun, experiment. That's what this whole game is about, is really just about experimenting. There are certain areas of the game, multiplayer is required, and you actually need a friend or jump into a rando game to actually complete some of the things, the Pestilence Parlor or Daria's End. You need a friend to actually go through it and to activate certain things while you're doing the main puzzle. They might have to go through the different doors for you and try to figure out the actual puzzle to unlock specific items or events and things like that. So some areas of multiplayer is required if you're so inclined to do that. You don't have to do it unless you want the specific items. I thought this was actually pretty cool. The dog animation, if you're running the handler archetype, he'll do a cool little animation for you when you level up. So I thought that was cool. So check out for that. I thought it was neat. And the last thing, regenerate HP for perks. So using a relic to heal yourself counts towards the medic prime perk. This also counts if you're using something like the blood root. If anything like that heals you, any type of healing, regenerate HP for those perks. So medic has a cool prime perk where once you restore 250 total to health, you regain a spent relic charge. So if you're healing health very much and regaining health fast enough every time you use a relic, you can pretty much have infinite relics, which is really nice, pretty cool. So make sure you're using whatever regenerative health items that you have, because anything you use it goes into that regenerative prime perk, which is pretty cool. That about wraps it up for Remnant 2. As I mentioned before, Remnant 2 is all about exploring, experimenting, and building your character. You'll be replaying dungeons to uncover hidden loot, to mastering builds with the new prism and relic fragment systems. And there's always something new to discover, which is probably one of my favorite things about Remnant 2. The whole game for me has been a 10 out of 10. The last two DLCs, they weren't rated that great for me. I have reviews coming out for them, but otherwise, take your time, enjoy the full process, and don't be afraid to try different combinations. There are many different things out there you can find. Don't just go for a cookie cutter build or use someone else's build. Really try and find synergy that fits your playstyle so you can have the character you exactly want to play. One thing I did forget to mention is that one of the patches, I think during the Lonesome patch, they added in loadouts. So you can have up to 8 loadouts plus the current state you have, so actually 9, which is or the last gear state you actually had. So it's like 9 loadouts. So this is pretty cool. You can save a loadout to one of these things. You can save it. So if you have a specific build and you don't want to lose it, you can add it. Pretty cool. Love Remnant 2. So I hope you found this helpful. If this has been any helpful at all, if you're a brand new player, slap that subscribe button, hit that like button. It will help this video get out to other Remnant 2 players who might be returning or are brand new to the series, and hopefully get this information in front of them so they can learn, jump into the game. So I appreciate you all watching this. It means a lot for all your support, and I'll check you all at the next one. Peace out, everyone.